Hi there, this is Ronnie, and on this channel I talk mostly about raw foods, and uh, feel free to subscribe and everything. And what I'm going to talk about in this video is, let me just get this thing set up. I want to talk about a really important question that a lot of people talk about or ask in the raw food diet is, do you have to have greens or could you just eat fruit? And what I practice, what a lot of people I know that do a raw vegan diet, is a fruit-based diet where we have a high carbohydrate, low fat diet based on fruit, and sweet fruit being the main, making up the most of our calories. And comes from a book called the 80-10-10 Diet. Mostly that was one of the main books that really proposes that, so you can read that book if you want to find out more about that. But within the whole raw vegan thing, there's always been a bit of a question about that. I guess there's always been people that have been more towards the fruit and the fruitarianism, but there's also been there's people that are completely anti-fruit in the raw movement, and really sort of believe that fruit, for example, is no longer what it once was, and that we've taken it and we've changed it and we've genetically modified it and we've made it much sweeter and it's not natural food anymore or something like that. So that's what some people seem to think. So they have concerns about fruit and they think it's a problem. So just to start off with that question, the first thing, I think it's quite plainly clear that fruit is the healthiest food for human beings. I don't really think that that's very questioned, even scientifically and anything else. If you look at any study referring to fruit when it comes to health and disease and sickness, fruit is always negatively correlated towards disease. So the more fruit people eat, the less likely they are to suffer from almost any disease, and the more likely they are to be healthier. Fruit is a food that is obviously recommended for people to eat more. The Global Burden of Disease study reckon that not eating enough fruit is the biggest cause of disease, which is also the biggest cause of disability and premature death among people. So I don't think there's a great argument that fruit isn't the healthiest food for human beings. Another fascinating thing is, if we look into the history of deficiencies and dietary deficiencies, we find that these happen when people are on starch-based diets without fruit and vegetables. Starch-based and meat-filled diets are the ones that lead towards the major deficiencies that we've seen in human populations when they've happened. Now, deficiencies are pretty rare and they don't really happen. People have low levels of different nutrients, of course, and maybe people don't have enough of a lot of nutrients, but actual diseases manifesting as a result of that. Well, you could say things like heart disease, diabetes, and cancer are a result of that, but they're really a result of the excess of bad foods. But getting back to this question more specifically about fruit, and could you just be a fruitarian? The interesting thing for me is, you go on a raw vegan forum and if someone asks a question, could their child just wants to eat fruit, would that be okay? And immediately what you get is people in a raw food forum immediately saying that wouldn't be enough, they would have to have this, add this in, blend this with their smoothies, do this. And we're trying to figure out ways to make a child that doesn't want to eat those things, make them eat those things, because we're assuming that fruit is a food that will cause all these terrible dietary deficiencies. Now, on what evidence does that idea stand? No evidence whatsoever. What there is what they've actually done is they've looked at the recommended daily allowance for various nutrients. They've looked at how much, what would happen if you ate a day of fruit, and they figured out, well, you'd be low in protein, you'd be low in omega-6, you'd be a little low in omega-3, you'd be low in various minerals, you wouldn't have vitamin D, you wouldn't have B12. They've looked at it like that, and they've said, well, there you go, you would be deficient. But that's not the way to look at this. The question is there evidence that a fruit diet leads to dietary deficiency diseases? Has that ever been shown? Is there any evidence of that? And the answer is no, because obviously there's not a lot of studies around fruit diets, but there isn't really a lot of evidence within the community of raw vegans, within people who have tried a fruit diet. There's a lot of people that say, I was eating just fruit, I feel better if I eat vegetables. That's fine. I was eating just fruit, I feel better if I add nuts and seeds in. That's all fine, but it's not evidence. And there's a lot of people that claim they have evidence because they met someone that did this, they met someone that did that. And some of the most scientifically minded people in the raw food movement, I've heard them say completely non-scientific things about this thing. Oh yeah, no, I met a guy that was eating just fruit, and then when he started eating other things, he was so much better and he was a healthier person. But that's just an anecdote. That's not any evidence whatsoever. So there's no evidence of a fruit diet leading to any dietary deficiencies as far as I'm aware of. There's raw food studies. If we just widen it out into raw food studies, there's raw food studies that show low B12. But low B12 is not, once again, low B12 doesn't mean B12 deficiency. It just means they had low B12. They weren't manifesting the symptoms of B12 deficiency. They just had low B12 in their blood test. So, but here's another way of looking at this. Is it something to worry about? Guess what's the great thing about having a dietary deficiency? Guess what's the great thing about that? It's very easy to solve. It's incredibly easy to solve. So if you do develop B12 deficiency 15 years into your vegan diet, you can cure it overnight, basically, or maybe in a short period of time. Completely curable. By the time you're developing symptoms, you've not really done any long-term damage. So, if you do have a deficiency, celebrate, because at least it's not some incurable condition. At least you've not got some incurable genetic condition or something like that. No, you've got a deficiency, so you just supplement or go to the doctor, figure out what the advice is. Probably some kind of supplement or whatever. So people are really freaking out about deficiencies, and it's the simplest thing in the world to deal with. Basically every vegan's aware of B12, so it's not really something to worry about. Vitamin D, I think people need to get more sunlight, but not too much sunlight at the same time. And then all the minerals, I don't think we really see people going around with mineral deficiencies that much. And in the raw vegan movement, I've seen people that say they have. I've seen people that diagnose people with it without any evidence. I've seen people self-diagnosing themselves with all sorts of things. I don't see any real evidence of mineral deficiencies. Vitamin deficiencies, well, you're not going to get that in a fruit diet. That's where you get your vitamins from. That's why people have had deficiencies, because they didn't eat fruit over the years. And protein, we don't really see protein deficiency. Fats, we don't see fat deficiencies, whatever that would even be. So carbohydrate, of course, so people worry excessively about that. Now, does that mean that a fruit-only diet is the right thing? No, not necessarily. It's not necessarily the healthiest thing. Might not be. I don't think we've got any real evidence to say one fruit only or fruit with everything else. I don't think we've got a lot of evidence. I would say that all the frugivorous primates, from what we see, they don't just eat fruit. However, they usually prefer fruit and go for fruit if they've got that. Go for fruit only, basically, if they've got the option. Well, I did, when I was speaking to Catherine Milton, she was talking about the Howler monkeys would have fruit up to a particular point in the day, and then they'd change to having leaves. So maybe that's something that we would have been like. Although I don't see many people eating leaves, I see them eating greens, which are essentially foods that we've created over selective breeding over time. Things like lettuces and things like that. I don't see people going out in their garden and eating leaves. I don't see that happening so much. But the fear, the worry that people have around not eating greens or not eating nuts and seeds is, to me, totally misplaced. Once again, it's totally, if it does cause a problem, completely curable. You can deal with it absolutely no problem. So, I mean, the same with many diseases though, in a way. Like, you can hopefully reverse heart disease, but you'll do some level of damage, right? With these other chronic conditions, you might be able to reverse them, but you'll do like extreme damage with it. So I would rather avoid those diseases, which are diseases of nutritional excess. Because we're human beings and animals, because we're an animal, we're worried about not getting enough, because starvation was a very real fear, was a very real thing that happened all the time. So it was evolutionarily, genetically positive for us in terms of survival to be more concerned about lack than to be worried about too much. So eat more, make sure you eat enough. It doesn't even matter what it is, eat, because at some point the food maybe runs out for a while. You need to have some stored, reserves. So people are concerned about not eating enough, right? When they should be concerned about the fact they eat way too much of bad things. So when we take away the bias we have towards worrying about deficiency, when deficiency isn't even really something to worry about, because it's probably not going to happen. If it does happen, it's easy to fix. And probably easy to diagnose as well, so it's quite easy to figure out what it is. To eating a diet of the wrong foods or bad foods that causes disease and causes problems, and causes real damage over time, which might not be able to be fully reversed. We should be more worried about that, but because of our bias, we're more worried about deficiency. And if we just sit and think rationally about it, common sense, sit and think about it, we're much better off being concerned about the excess and limiting the excess of bad foods and increasing the good foods in our diet. So, is a fruit-only diet a good thing? I honestly can't say for a person's entire life that it's the best thing that's better than a raw diet that's got a mixture of stuff. But I really enjoyed times when I've just eaten fruit. I've really enjoyed times when I've just eaten mono meals of fruit, and I've also enjoyed times when I've had a mixture of things. I don't see nuts and seeds as being some kind of massive nutritional boost to your diet. I see them as having more problems because of the high level of fat. I see them as having far more problems. So the idea that people are and nuts, they don't even anyway, they're not even that great nutritionally anyway. Fruits are the magic food for human beings. Fruits are the food that is really balanced properly for us. And some people argue, well, the tropical fruits have more fat. Not really. Most of them don't. There's a few of them that do have a little bit more fat. Most of them don't. So, yeah, I think if you want to just do a fruit diet for a while, for a year, for a decade, I think you can do it. I don't think there's going to be any big problem. You must eat enough calories, and that's going to be the biggest error that you'll probably make, is not eating enough. Losing weight, and that's once again kind of simple to sort out. You need to eat more. And Yeah, but other than that, I don't see there's been any major dangers of a fruit only diet. But if you do have problems, easy to fix. You can just add in other foods to your diet. It's not going to be a big deal. But my prediction is that most people would be healthier on a fruit only diet than whatever diet you're doing right now. Whatever diet you're doing right now, because I'm going to assume a lot of you aren't 100% raw vegan, fruit only diet would be better. And for 99.99999% of the people out there, if they were on a fruit only diet, their health would be so much better in every single way. And yet, in the raw food community, we're concerned about fruit only diets. This is a very easy thing as well to make sense to a person. You know, what should I do to be healthier? Eat more fruit. Eat just fruit. Take one fruit and just eat as much of that as you like. It's so simple an idea to get across. When you start to go into this whole, well, I have fruit and I do this and I do the thing and blah 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 and I'm on a meal and then I have a mixture of this and add this in and add these little supplements, it becomes a bit complicated for people. Fruit only for months, years at a time, maybe for people that aren't well, especially, is going to be fantastic for them. I just can't see it being a negative. So that would be my message. Get away from the fear of fruit. Get away from the fear of deficiencies in a fruit diet, which aren't going to happen. If they do happen, simple to deal with, not a big deal. And move and be more concerned about the dangers of the standard diet, the standard foods, of cooked foods, and all the problems that will come along with that. So thank you for joining me today. If you want to keep up with notifications, you can go to fruitfest.co.uk. You can join my newsletter. I'm going to be doing another Fruity Fridays tomorrow night. I'm going to have an online course coming up soon if you want to join. And thank you for following, and feel free to subscribe. And I think I'm close to 3,000 subscribers. So after 8 years of YouTube, that's the slowest growing YouTube channel in the history of the world. But I appreciate it. Thank you very much.